All right, so today, what we're going to do is we're going to address immigration in the United States at this time period. Um, what number are we on? You guys have C or B?
I think we're on C.
We did B, right? If I remember correctly, Haymarket Square should be B. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's go to big number C. Big number C, immigration in the United States. Big number C, immigration in the United States. Hey, Allison. All right, so let's start with Ellis Island. Okay, so Ellis Island is an island in New York Harbor. It's an island in New York Harbor, and this is the island that receives most immigrants at this time period. Okay, the majority of immigrants are coming from Europe at this time period. American oh, I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. American immigration comes in 3 waves, or 4 waves throughout our history. Okay, 4 waves. The first wave is early American wave, and it ends at around 1810 or so. That wave is almost totally British and German people. The second wave was right around the Civil War. It was from like 1840 to like 1870. And that wave is mostly Irish. So the second wave is mostly Irish. The third wave, which is the wave that we're talking about now, is from like 1880 to 1917. 1880 to 1917. The third wave is the largest wave by far the largest wave. And it's mostly, the wave is mostly coming from Italy, Spain, Greece, Poland, Russia, and then Jewish people from around Europe. There's also a significant amount of Chinese people coming. Okay, we'll do fourth wave real quick, but it's not in this scope. But fourth wave of immigration comes after 1970. After 1970, and that's mostly from Latin America. And right now, you guys are either in the end of the fourth wave or the beginning of the fifth wave. We're not sure yet, right? We're not 100% sure yet, because in the last like 6 or 7 years, Latino immigration has really dropped and Asian immigration has shot up, right? So right now, the largest immigrant countries are like India and China by far, but for the last like 70 years, the largest immigrant country has been Mexico, right? But Mexico is now like number 4. It's number 4 or 5. So we're not 100% sure if we're in the fifth wave yet or still the end of the fourth wave. The fourth wave has been really big and long and steady. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. All right. So for Ellis Island. So it's an island in New York Harbor. All of the ships come into New York. Almost all these immigrant ships are coming into New York, and it's day after day after day. New York is receiving 5, 6, 7, 10 ships a day that are coming in filled with immigrants. Okay, and these immigrants all have to stop in Ellis Island. Here's what the building looks like, and then they have to like check in and see who they are, right? What's the practical reason why Ellis Island is the stop? Why not just let him into New York? Take a shot. What do you guys think? What's the reason why? Allison, what's your instinct? What do you guys think?
Maybe to make sure they aren't like bad people or anything.
Okay. So in the modern sense, you do like a criminal background check or something on him, right? This is 1892, so there's no such thing as a criminal background check. You would basically just look at them and decide if they're good, right? What else? There's something else though. There's a really, really practical reason. Will, do you got an idea?
Get them their citizenship?
Get them what?
Their citizenship?
Well, no, not necessarily. Okay, the real problem is disease. right? So that's what you need to put in here is disease. You're checking these guys for disease. Allison, they may want to check for criminals, but they just don't. Records just don't exist. Computers don't exist. Like none of that stuff exists at this point, right? But they can look for diseases, make them open their mouth, look down their throat, see if they got spots, make them, see if they're sick. And then if they're sick, you just basically just keep them on the island until they either die or get better, right? But if you let all these sick people into New York, you could have a real problem, right? Because you could have 1 million people get sick overnight, and that would be a real big problem, okay? Ellis Island is the receiving end on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it's called Angel Island. On the West Coast, it's called Angel Island, and it's in San Francisco. All right, so this wave of immigrants, where are they coming from? Rain, give me a country they're coming from.
You said like Italy, right? And Spain.
Italy's the big one. Will, give me another. Allison, you're next.
Germany?
No, not in this wave. So Germany is in the second wave. This is third wave. So who's coming in the third wave?
Spain.
Okay, Spain. Italy's number 1. Spain is also there. Okay, Allison? Give me another.
Poland.
Poland, that's a big one. Okay, Rain, give me another.
Like Portugal? I don't know.
I didn't say Portugal, but it is coming. No, what else? Will, what else? You're missing, there's 3 big ones still.
China.
Okay, so there is Chinese. Yeah, there is Chinese. Okay, who else, Allison?
Russians.
Russians, and one other really big group. Anyone?
Jewish people.
Jewish people, yeah. So this is the first time in American history, and you should maybe put a star next to this. This is the first time in American history where we're getting a lot of immigrants that are not Christian. The first time in American history we're getting non-Christian immigrants, right? Namely the Chinese people and the Jewish people, right? And this is going to cause problems. All right, so with immigration, let's do some pros and cons of immigration. Well, we'll do that in a minute. Okay, so next, let's go to big number C. C stands for the Statue of Liberty. Look at her. Look at her, she's under construction. All right, so the Statue of Liberty gets raised up in 1886, in October of 1886. The Statue of Liberty is a gift to the United States. It comes from France. The French gave it to us as a gift. And they gave it to us as a gift for the celebration of the end of slavery. Right, that's why it's liberty. That's why, because you're getting liberty to the slaves. That the French were celebrating the end of slavery, and so they gave us the Statue of Liberty. Do you guys know what the Statue of Liberty looked like originally? What color is she?
She was African American, right?
No.
Oh,
well, no.
Are you talking wasn't there like an original statue that was
so there
like
is,
not that?
Yeah, there is one. Yeah.
Yeah, she was brown though. She was brown.
Right.
The copper.
So she's copper, right? She's copper. She's penny colored. Her normal color is like the color of a penny, right? It's like that copper color. But today she's not. She's green, of course, right? Why is it green? Did they paint it?
Copper rust green.
There you go. Thank you, welder. Hey. Yeah, copper rust green. So why would you pick copper? Why would you pick copper if it's just going to rust? Do you know that one, Will?
No.
Okay, so normally when metal rusts, it falls apart, right? It breaks apart and falls apart. But when copper rusts, the rust is actually sturdier and harder than the copper itself, right? So oxidized copper is actually sturdier. And so they picked copper on purpose because she was going to stand in New York Harbor. So she needs to be able to withstand like winter storms and rain, and she needs to withstand all the weather. And so they needed her to be, and particularly the salt water, right? Because waves and salt water are going to constantly be hitting her. And so copper rust doesn't break apart with salt water, and it's actually sturdier than copper itself. So that's why they made it. That's why you'll see that a lot with statues in like bad weather places, that they'll make them like that, right? This doesn't work for iron, of course, right? If iron rusts, it falls apart and breaks. But if copper rusts, it actually just gets stronger. All right.
What year was this?
1886. I always have the years in the top corner, if you can see them.
Oh, he's moved.
Yeah. If you got our pictures there, maybe. Yeah, but the 1886. So it's a gift from France land. The maker of it is a guy named Gustave Eiffel, right? The Eiffel Tower of France. Gustave Eiffel is famous for two big sculptures, the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty. That's pretty cool, huh? All right, so here's the poem that sits on the foot of the Statue of Liberty, okay? So she is standing on Liberty Island. Liberty Island is a tiny little island next door to Ellis Island, right? Ellis Island, where all the immigrants come in. This means that when immigrants come into New York, the first thing they see is the Statue of Liberty. Their ships have to pass the Statue of Liberty to get to Ellis Island, right? So here's our poem. Allison, can you read the poem for us, nice and loud and clear?
Not like the brazen giant of Greek flame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide, in her mild eyes command, the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame, keep ancient lands, give storied prompt, she cries with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refused of your teeming shores. Send those, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
All right. This is, if we were to have a national poem, this would probably be our national poem, right? As far as I know, we don't have a national poem, but this would be it. What is this poem saying, guys? I know we're going to do poetry class, and you were expecting history, but we got to do some poetry. What is this saying, particularly this part? Do you guys, well, first off, do any of you know what a colossus is? What a colossus is? Not in the X-Men, something else.
I don't.
No? All right, so in Greek mythology, the colossus is a giant statue that stands at the harbor of Rhodes in Greece, the city of Rhodes. And the statue would stand, according to the mythology, the statue stands with one leg on one side of the harbor, one leg on the other side of the harbor, and then his body going up, so ships have to pass between his legs to get into the city, right? That is probably not true, most assuredly not true, because it would mean that the statue would have to be like 150 feet tall, right? And that's insane. Right, it's insane for ancient Greece. According to the legends, an earthquake hit and the statue fell into the ocean, right? So this first stanza is saying that she's the new Colossus, right? Just like Colossus stood at Rhodes, she's standing in New York, right? But this second stanza is what we really need. This is the stanza that you're going to see quoted everywhere. This is the stanza that matters, okay? So let's take a shot at it. What do we think this means? Rain?
Maybe like it's supposed to be like representing freedom, so they're saying bring everyone from any point of like walk of life, like they can all come here, right?
Yeah. Who's it welcoming?
The immigrants.
Yeah. Right. And this is really important, right? Keep ancient land your storied pomp, right? Do you guys know what pomp means? Like pomp and circumstance? It means like traditions, right? So ancient lands keep your traditions. The ancient lands in this case would be like the old world, Europe and stuff, right? Because we're the new world, they're the old world. right? Cries she with silent lips. This is the quote. This is the masterful quote. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Right? This is what she says with her silent lips. Right? Who is she asking for? What kinds of immigrants are we looking for?
The ones who yearn for freedom?
Okay. Are we looking for rich immigrants?
No.
Are we looking for like only immigrants that have a college degree?
They're looking for ones that like want a chance at a better life.
Yeah.
Like ones that want to work up.
Right? She's asking for the tired, for the poor, for the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Huddled masses in this case because the ships are so cold, right, with the sea on them, that they're all huddled together, like shivering in the cold, right? This is the best line though. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. What is refuse? Do you guys know what refuse is? It's garbage. Refuse is garbage. She's asking for the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. She says, give me your garbage people. Give me the people you don't want, the rejects of your society. The people you don't want, give them to me. You hate Jewish people? Send them on over. You hate Puritans? Send them over. You hate poor Irish people? Send them over. Right? This is really, really important, okay? Because America has this like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde version of immigration in some ways, right? On one side, we're asking for the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, right? On one side, we're saying, give me everyone. Give me your homeless, your tempest tossed. These are people being thrown around in the storm, right? Give me your garbage people on this one side. On the other side, we freak out about immigrants, right? And we elect people who, you know, put kids in cages and things, right? Like we have this backlash that we're not comfortable with immigration, right? And America always has this push and pull back and forth. Sometimes we really want immigrants and sometimes we're really resist immigrants, right? Back and forth. But the key here is that in the United States, you don't have to be special to get here. America's open for everyone. This is not true of other countries. I looked into immigrating to Australia a while ago, and Australia requires you to have $20,000 in cash in your bank account, right? And you have to be able to survive 3 years in Australia without a job and not going into debt. And you have to maintain at least $20,000 in your bank account. Right? Which really means you have to have like $100,000 in your bank account because you have to be able to live off your wealth. Australia doesn't want you unless you're wealthy. Right? Japan won't even accept you at all. Even if you're the son or the daughter of Japanese, of like a half Japanese, half white person, they still won't accept you. Right? There's a lot of countries that just won't accept you. We are the country that will accept the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the tempest tossed, the homeless tempest tossed, the wretched refuse of the teeming shore. We'll take them, right? Now, the Statue of Liberty doesn't greet immigrants today, right? Where are most immigrants coming from today? Fourth wave and fifth wave immigration, where are they mostly coming from?
Mexico.
Okay, Mexico and Asia.
In India, yeah.
Yeah, India, China, Philippines, Vietnam. India, China, Philippines, Vietnam, Mexico, and Guatemala and El Salvador, right? That's it. Those are the big seven. Those are the seven big countries that are producing immigrants today. Venezuela is also jumping up that list, right? They're not coming through here, right? Immigrants today are showing up at airports all over the country, right? Most immigrants don't arrive on boats. They arrive on planes. It's 2020, man. What are you going to do, right? So they arrive on a plane and then they land anywhere in the country, or they cross the desert of Mexico, right? They're crossing the desert of like Arizona or Texas or something. And are you going to tell me that some woman crossing the desert holding a baby in her hands while she's a baby in her hands and a jug of water in her other hand while the toddler walks behind her and she crosses the Arizona desert to get here. Are you going to try to tell me that she's not the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the homeless tempest tossed, the wretched refuse, right? Seems to me like she follows that definition pretty darn good, doesn't she? Right? And this is where American immigration comes from. This is our policy here. Okay? All right, so let's do, we need to do a pros and cons of immigration. So in your notes, go down one and put pros and cons of immigration, and then put pros on the left side, cons on the right side. Okay, so what do we, let's talk good stuff about immigrants first, right? So what's the good thing about immigrants? What does it do for us?
It gives us more people.
Okay, so it keeps our population growing. Let's put that as number one. Okay, the United States right now has a natural increase rate of 1.8. If you remember in geography class, 1.8 means that our country is shrinking. Right? The increased rate of a population needs to be 2.1 because you need to have more babies to replace mom and dad, right? Mom and dad produce a baby. Mom and dad need to produce more than 2 babies, otherwise we're not growing, right? So you need 2.1 babies. I don't mean like 2 babies in a foot. I don't mean that. I mean like every 10th woman has 3 kids. That's what we mean, right? So our natural increase rate is 1.8. Because of immigrants, our increase rate is 2.2. So immigrants keep the economy running. What else? Give me another one, Allison or Rain.
It's more diverse.
Okay, so it increases our diversity, right? Why is diversity good? We all just accept that it's good because elementary teachers put it on the bulletin board in the hallway, but why is it actually good? Anyone can chime in. Yeah.
Is
What are we saying, Will?
different cultures, different ideas, different forms of life. We get to learn more.
Okay, all right. So it gives us more ideas. It gives us more ideas. It gives us more culture. What else? Allison, we haven't heard from you for a while. What else? Why is diversity good?
Maybe because it leads to more innovation.
Okay, that's good. That's a good economic argument, Allison, right? So diversity creates creativity. The more diversity you have, the more creative you can become, right? What else? Okay, how about it gives us a better variety on things like food and television shows and music, right? Like, where would we be without immigrants on our food? I had pizza yesterday and I had sushi, right? Both of them came from immigrants, right? If I don't have immigrants, I'm stuck eating just sausages every day. That sounds terrible. Actually, sausages came from German immigrants. I'm stuck eating British food. Oh my God. We don't want British food. That's terrible. British food is a nightmare, right? Where would we be without Italian food and Chinese food and Mexican food? I mean, everything I love comes from immigrants, right? And same with TV shows and movies and everything, okay? All right, so diversity is an advantage. What's the other advantage of immigration? 1, it keeps the population growing. 2, it increases our diversity.
Does it fill up more jobs?
Okay, so it gives us jobs. Typically, what kinds of jobs? Immigrants specifically do what kinds of jobs?
Like
Hard labor.
like labor, like minimum wage
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, so it gives us labor jobs. It gives us workers that will do the jobs that native people don't want. Right? How many native-born people are like asking to be janitors? No one, right? How many native-born people are asking to like, you know, go work construction and stuff, right? Not very many, right? A lot of those jobs are immigrants. A lot of them are. Will, you want to work construction? Well, you want to be a welder.
I'm working, yeah.
Yeah, see? But do you work now?
I'm going to once I'm 18 and join the union.
Nice. Nice. I'd be willing to bet that once you get onto a construction site, that you're going to find probably 2/3 of your coworkers are immigrants. Right? Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go on the con side. What's the negatives of immigration?
Overpopulation. I mean,
Okay. It's possible overpopulation. That's never actually come up though, because if we get in danger of it, the country just stops the immigration, right? But in theory, it's a problem, right? In theory, could be too crowded. Okay. What else?
Disease, like what you said, they were checking for disease, so
Okay.
a spread of it.
Yeah. So back then, that was a real problem. Today, that's not really a problem because of airports. Airports really kind
Oh.
of make it so that everyone gets every disease all the time anyway, right? Like, so we've already kind of super screwed ourselves on that one, right? Airports are
Right.
just going to bring us whatever. What else?
Maybe
Wait.
like a fall in like real wages.
Okay. So there is an argument that immigrants keep the wages down for native-born people. There is that argument, and there's like some data on it. It's kind of shaky, right? Like, if I'm a teacher at Hillcrest High School, how much is my wages affected by the fact that a bunch of Mexicans are working in the construction site down the street,
That's true.
right? Like, my wages aren't affected by that, you know? So that's why you can put it on here as a con, right? You can put it on here as a con, but there's not 100% good data on that. It's kind of wishy-washy sometimes.
like inflation.
Yeah, inflation is part of the same argument there, right? And again, kind of wishy-washy on the details. There's a cultural argument, right? A lot of people don't like immigrants. And that's something that we need to consider, okay? I think it was Allison that said diversity makes our creativity, right? I think it was Allison, or Rain, maybe? Okay, yeah, but diversity, we put diversity in the good column. Let's put diversity in the bad column as well. Because a lot of people put in there, diversity causes anxiety. Diversity causes anxiety. A lot of people are really, really nervous about, cultural diversity, right? A lot of people start to freak out when they go to the grocery store and everyone around them is speaking another language.
They
Okay,
don't feel involved.
yeah, they feel like they're like visitors in their own society, is what you hear a lot of them say, that they're not involved, and they get really angry. When I was living in Maryland, I had my neighbor. I moved into a neighborhood in Maryland. My wife and I lived in Maryland for like 10 years, right? And we bought a house in this neighborhood. We moved in, and we didn't know this at the time, but we moved into Little Mexico, right? When we bought the house, we didn't know that. But we were just moving in, and I met my neighbor. My neighbor was this old guy. He was like 60, 68 years old, gray hair, white guy, right? And he was an old firefighter, a retired firefighter. And his name is John. And he comes in and he greets me, and I shake his hand, and we're chatting for a little bit. And he warns me, and he says, "I have to warn you." He's like, "It's really good to have you come into my neighborhood. I really appreciate that." And I'm like, "Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here." And he's like, "I got to warn you though, the neighborhood has really changed in the last couple of years." He's like, "A lot of these Mexicans have been coming in, and now everyone speaks Spanish in the neighborhood." Right? And I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "That's cool." Now, I had lived in Texas where everything was Little Mexico, and I was the only English speaker in my entire neighborhood, right? So it didn't bother me at all. I was like, "Okay, cool." Right? And I was like, "All right, well, that's pretty cool." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, the park right next to us, we had a park right next to our house." And he says, "Yeah, you'll hear them in the summertime." He's like, "All day long, they're just out there playing soccer all day long." He's like, "They'll start playing soccer in the morning, and they'll play it all through the afternoon, and they play it all the way into the evening." And I looked over at the park, and I saw the soccer field, and I said, "Well, isn't that a soccer field out there?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, it is, but you'll see it all summer long. They're going to be playing soccer all day long." And I'm like, "Well, isn't that what they're supposed to do?" Isn't it? It's a soccer field, right? That's what you're supposed to do with a soccer field. And he's like, yeah, but you know what I mean. They're out there all the time playing. And I said, all right, well, that sounds cool. Maybe I'll go watch a game or two, right? And then he warned me. He's like, and he would come back later on and he'd warn me. He'd say, hey, you know, Halloween's coming. He's like, I just want to warn you that when a lot of the kids come to trick or treat, they won't be able to say English. They won't be able to say trick or treat because they don't even know English, right? And I was like, okay, well, you know, if they're in costume, then I don't really care. I'll just give them candy, you know, like, because, you know, because that's what you do, right? And the thing is, over the years, I got to know John. And John was a good man in a lot of ways. He was a very, very kind man. He helped us out with stuff. We helped him out. He would help out neighbors, like do yard work and stuff. Like he was a kind-hearted man, but he was still freaked out by the change, right? The neighborhood had changed around him and he didn't feel welcome in his own neighborhood anymore. Now, it's easy for us to say John was a racist and just write him off, and he was a racist. He did, you know, I mean, it was racist, right? It was racist, but it's also not really helpful to just sit here and call him a racist when we could also recognize that immigration causes anxiety, right? The solution to that is not to just call them a racist and tell them to shut up. The solution is to help him get to know the neighbors and get to know them and get to, you know, see why they're nice people. And you know what I mean? Like you have to address the anxiety in a way that you're not just making them feel bad about themselves, because then they get defensive about it. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? Over the years, John did make friends with our neighbors. We had some neighbors who were Mexicans, but they also spoke English, and we would hang out and drink beer and chat with them and stuff. And John did make friends with them, right? His anxiety was not that they were Mexican. His anxiety was that he wasn't able to talk to them, right? He liked being able to talk to his neighbors, and his other neighbors only spoke Spanish. And so it was a problem for him, right? That's something that you need to keep in mind as we go through this entire era, because this era is really, really anti-immigrant. And there is some dark racist stuff that goes on in this era. Some really, really bad stuff, really dark, right? And it comes from what would have been a normal level of anxiety, like my neighbor John, getting magnified over time because people are ignoring them or making them feel shame. And then it turns into violence and it turns into really, really nasty racism. Okay? So diversity is an advantage to be sure, but diversity does cause anxiety. It does cause anxiety, right? And I'm firmly on the side of diversity is the advantage. I'm firmly on the side of pro-immigration, right? I just think you need to acknowledge that the anxiety is there. Otherwise, they're going to blow stuff up and kill people, right? You need to address it. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah? What do you think, Rain? Rain, you look like you're not on board.
Oh no, I know that people, you know, there's a stigma. My grandmother immigrated from Mexico, a rural part of Mexico, during the 60s, and she was segregated, she was called names, she was assaulted, she had food thrown at her, she was spat on. I do recognize that there's a stigma. It wasn't even that long ago. There still is this stigma, and
absolutely
it happens. Yeah.
Absolutely there is, but here's the key. Your grandma received all that hatred, right? But I'd be willing to bet that her granddaughter doesn't, or receives a much less, right? And what we find is that usually within 3 generations, the immigrants have been completely integrated into society, right? Grandparents, that first generation dies with an accent, right? They may never even know English, but they die with a thick accent, right? They're more comfortable in their native language, right? Their children will speak both the native language and English, right? Native language and English usually. By the time you get to the grandkids, most of the time the grandkids don't speak the language. Most of the time the grandkids only speak English, right? Most of the time. Or if they speak the native language, like if you speak Spanish, right? you'll only speak a really light version of Spanish, like a childish kitchen. We call it kitchen Spanish. You speak enough Spanish to talk to your mom in the kitchen, but not enough Spanish to write a report on it, to write a explanation of gravity or something like that, or like do calculus in Spanish.
Yeah.
Does that seem about right, Ray?
No, that's accurate. My brother's very fluent, though, but I only know.
Yeah. So there's always some people will remain fluent, and some people will stay fluent for generations and generations, right? If you really, really actively promote it. We have Tejanos in Texas where very famously, when I lived down in Texas, they would constantly say this: we didn't cross the border crossed us, right? And they were living in Texas when America took over Texas. I had a really good friend of mine. She was in the Air Force with me, and she was from Houston, and she was Mexican, and she spoke Spanish. She was Mexican. She had brown skin. She looked like she was Mexican, right? Brown skin, dark hair, Spanish speaker, but she wasn't. She was Tejano, and her family had 8 generations of Americans. And she would say, I didn't cross the border crossed me, And that's true for Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. There's a significant population of Chicanos that they didn't cross the border crossed them. Yeah. Anyway, we're good to stop here for now, but we're going to get some more immigration stuff coming up here soon. Okay. I'm going to stop recording real quick.